Hello, dear viewers. Today we have a very special guest with us, a well-known educationist with us from United States of America, Mr. John Moravec. Hello, Mr. John Moravec. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing great. So I'm 10 hours behind you, so it's still morning here. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's night time here, sir. So thank you
yeah,
so much again. So let's start with our questions, sir, if you allow me.
sure.
Sure.
hmm
So first of all, Mr. John, kindly tell us about yourself and your idea about leapfrog taxonomy.
Oh boy. Well, I'm an education futurist. So what I do is I try to get a sense of what the future of society is going to be, what the future of work is going to be, and then I backcast into what sort of actions we need to take in education and schools today to help meet these needs. And all that leapfrogging is, if I was to really distill it down to a very simple point, is just kind of thinking about the future and making it happen today, rather than going step by step by step to do something, just kind of leaping forward to do things. For 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 policy leaders or policymakers, government leaders, particularly in developing nations, this is kind of a big deal because I always thought, well, we got to catch up. And so they're doing, first we have to do A, then we have to do B, then C, we have to build this, we have to build this, and kind of build up to something. And when you start doing that, you're always in a state of catching up. You don't get an opportunity to really lead or lead with new innovations. And so leapfrogging just means, let's do it now. Let's just build it out. One great example, this is the big example that really got me thinking about leapfrogging 20 years ago, was in the 1990s. The World Bank and other development organizations were really investing in building telecommunications frameworks in sub-Saharan Africa, rolling out copper landlines so everybody had a telephone at their home. But there's a disruptive technology of mobile telephones, and so people just use those and they leapfrog ahead of these sort of development schemes.
Exactly.
And I think that if we get that sort of thinking going in education, I think that we can get some really impressive results.
Okay, really fine. So, sir, in your opinion, what is the major difference between Benjamin Bloom taxonomies and this leapfrog taxonomy?
Well, economy organized learning objectives into cognitive, affective, and sensory domains.
Yes, yes,
It was created for teaching and really only served as an attempt in how to organize things and how to organize content and evaluations. So it's kind of a control mechanism, as a quality mechanism, whereas leapfrogging is more of a practice.
Okay, that's great.
I guess where that question came from. So how do you think this relates to Bloom's taxonomy yourself?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that because I think we're all looking at this differently. We're all approaching it differently. So I think that helps to enhance the conversation. So yeah.
Okay, Dan, thank you for clearing me this. So, sir, why this world needs to be shifted on futuristic education, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I just excuse me, I just wrote an article and where I really pointed out that in the past few hundred years of this industrialized approach to education, nothing has really been more transformative than this COVID-19 crisis that we have. Within months, schools around the world shut down. We've got 1.4 billion kids at least that aren't in school. And many schools that kind of try to adapt using old approaches, using newer technologies. So they think that they're online, but they're really not doing online instruction. They're doing maybe emergency online teaching or emergency remote teaching, but it's really not changing the paradigms, not changing how they're thinking about the problems. They're just adapting new technologies to do the same old stuff. And I think that what is happening, and because my phone has been ringing nonstop over the last couple months, I think that it's really exposing the fallacies of mainstream learning, where we try to make everything really visible, but really not attending to true deep learning. So we're using these technologies to reinforce old practices instead of enabling new practices that really look towards the future.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that in the case of this pandemic and our use of these technologies, it's really magnified the problems that we've had in systems for years across all levels. So like for young kids and into adult years, right? So I think that what occurs in schools, what has been occurring in schools is now suddenly visible, and it's exposing these problems. I think it's becoming more apparent to teachers and other people that are filling, to parents and other people are filling the roles of teachers. And I think that people are starting to wonder, well, what actually happens in schools? How much of this is actually relevant? What else could we be doing? What new things could we be doing? And I think that, yeah, I think that the system and its learning or the lack of is really becoming visible. And we just need to build in, from my perspective, I think we need to build in more trustful participation. We need play, we need free exploration, and stop controlling for those outside of it.
Exactly.
Am I making any sense?
Yes, I'm 100% convinced with this idea. What is the right age for student to implement this leapfrog idea? What is the right age? When from very early age?
I don't think we need to prescribe any ages or say, oh, now you're at the right age to leapfrog. I think that people should be leapfrogging at any age, or could be. And the question I think that we have is, how do we enable you to start engaging in leapfrog thinking and leapfrog practices? And I think that helps define a new role for a teacher.
Okay. So, sir, I just want to ask another thing, that this leapfrog idea is implemented on curriculum or an assessment?
I don't know if you read, I wrote a couple of years ago a document called Manifesto 15. I think that some of the things are really reflected in there. And one of them is that if we're looking at it from a curriculum perspective, the role of the teacher, we talk about the sage on the stage or the guide on the side, but rather the role of the teacher is kind of to help enable us to try out things, maybe do things playfully, to explore. But the role of the teacher is to help make sure that the environment is safe. So, I mean, we learn well by failing, but we just don't want to become failures ourselves, right? We want to be able to get good experiences out of that. Now, when it comes to assessment, though, we have to be very careful about what we assess or how we assess. I think that when we're basing things on standards, I think too often we're thinking we're measuring kids' knowledge when actually we're just asking them to repeat back information, and that's giving us some false insights into if and how our kids are learning. So I think that we really need to attend to measuring what we value instead of valuing the measurement itself. And we just really need to find new ways. As an example of something that I think that did work, it doesn't exist anymore, but where I live in Minnesota, about 30 years ago, we had something called Profiles of Learning. And it was really a set of constructivist standards, I think about 80 standards. And so that is that students were measured on how well they created their own meanings as opposed to regurgitating back old information. And to me, that's important as it tends to individual knowledge development and really recognizes the importance of individual knowledge development.
Okay, that's great. So I want to ask another question, sir. You have four basic different steps in Leapfrog. The first is rote memorization, as you call it. The second is electronic. The third is creativity, and the fourth one is innovation. So kindly briefly for.
I think that if we look at this, it's kind of like a progression, but it's really tying together the relationships between kind of this rote mechanical memorization and then really activating imagination, creativity, and innovation. Innovation being really applied imagination and creativity, and just really separating those things out. So to really make things clear, and innovation being much more of something that we need to strive for enabling.
So, sir, how much this e-learning is important at this time? Like after COVID-19 situation, everyone is running for e-learning now. So, what do you think that how much this e-learning is important for our students and for our young generation?
You know, that's a good question, and I think my answer will change next month. My answer will change again the month after that, and the month after that. I think that, and I mean, I've said this for a long time. I've been very disappointed in e-learning, in online environments for learning. Incredibly disappointed in them because they tend to be focused on replicating the same old stuff. Or we look at a lot of these edutech companies, these startups, these new things coming in, and they're all really focused on, well, if we just change this one thing to this one thing, everything's gonna be different, and nothing's different. Nothing has really changed. I mean, we haven't seen in the startup world any of these so-called unicorns, you know, these wondrous companies that are really transformative and disruptive. We don't have that in education. But, I really think that given with so many people online or trying to get online or trying to do stuff online, that somebody somewhere may come up with a really disruptive idea or solution for how we can learn better using digital tools. So I'm an optimist in that, and I think that we can look at the COVID crisis as a sort of break point that really makes the failures that we had in the mainstream education system so far very visible, and how online education isn't really helping anything at all. And I think that it's going to help push people to create some new solutions. I mean, it's my hope, and I think at this point, we can only have an optimistic perspective on the outcome.
Okay, so our school, like we have 40-minute period for one subject and then another 40-minute period for another. So how can we change this all stuff in the school? I mean, in like in our country, in Pakistan, we have very set schedule for different subjects.
Right. Well, I would be really challenged to find any research that supports the idea that kids learn mathematics best from 10:45 a.m. until 11:30, or that kids learn period in school best from 7:37 in the morning till 2:45 p.m. It doesn't make any sense. As human beings, we're always learning all the time, and we need to really respect that, and we need to attend to that. As far as breaking everything into subjects and grades, there is some research out there that shows that, you know, it's maybe not the most effective idea. It's you can mix age groups together, and you have older kids mentoring younger kids, and vice versa, and sharing and learning together. You can do some interesting things, and also breaking out between subjects. I think that there's been attempts, many attempts, to try to blend in instruction between different subject matter, but it's been kind of difficult. And I think that we need to attend towards breaking down these strict silos and barriers, and yeah, and see what we can do to attend for more meaningful personal knowledge development.
Okay, fine. So, Mr. John, then how we assess our students' competencies?
Right. I don't. I mean, I talk about Minnesota's profiles of learning. I think that that's one example out there, and that was an assessment of about 80 competencies, taking a constructivist approach. But I really think that we need to engage communities, local communities, smaller communities, into this discussion to see what is important for us, what is important for our community, and not something that we really dictate down from national levels, but try to get this into real local community. We've got teachers, students, parents, other concerned community members together having a conversation on an equal plane to see what really matters to us, and then work on evaluations that are more meaningful to individuals and the communities in which they live.
have developed a curriculum in Pakistan according to Common Core State Standard. I think you have heard about that United States of America are doing Common Core State Standards. So we have developed a curriculum for preschool and primary kids, and we are focusing on to develop their life skills, their civic skills. But teachers and parents are not cooperating with us. Like they want that all traditional stuff. They are more on the numbers and grades. So
I think that you need a public relations campaign to help transform the mindset of parents and really communicate uh, the desire to develop these sets of skills. Um, and as for teacher development, I mean, I think that it's just really focusing on continuous professional development is something that is lacking throughout the world, and really engaging teachers in ways to be open to change, open to new ideas and trying new things. I think that in so many places we run into the challenge that you have a teacher that's been there for years, perhaps they inherited the job from from their mom, and they come in and say, I know my class, I know my students, I know how to teach, I know what to do. And you just need to engage in friendly conversations on, well, but we could also try this and also do other things. And I think that it's just really engaging with teachers and parents on a very human level, community level, one-on-one level, as much as we can, to really talk about what is valued, and how we will teach them.
Okay. So, sir, have you ever you planned any model for this leapfrog taxonomy, and you implementing somewhere?
You know, about 15 years ago, we had the Leapfrog Institutes at the University of Minnesota. And basically, we wound up in a position where we were sharing the Leapfrog idea a lot, but nobody really wanted to try anything. So I left the university about, I don't know, 8 years ago, and now all of a sudden there is a whole lot more interest in leapfrogging. So I think we're a bit ahead of our time. But the Brookings Institution actually did some interesting research, and they created a catalog of leapfrog type innovations that folks have been trying around the world, and that I could send you a link to some of their publications. But it's actually a really interesting catalog.
How this COVID-19 virus will affect our running education system? What do you think?
Well, as I said before, I think it's made everything that was broken about it visible. As we're taking all the broken pieces and just plugging into technology, I think it's just making the whole the problems that we have in the system, the content, our approaches, very visible to and clumsy to parents and teachers and people who have to evaluate stuff. So I really view the COVID-19 crisis as something that shows, that's just really illustrating how things are broken. But again, I'm really optimistic that it's going to really encourage us, or give us some insights on how we could build some new approaches and some fixes. And I don't think that we need one universal approach. I think we need a whole ecology of options out there. So as much as we can, I think we just need to encourage folks to try out new things and share ideas and be open about it. So it's gonna be an interesting time.
Yeah, so I really appreciate your idea. But do you have any plan to design any course for teachers so they can first learn that what is leapfrog education, and then they implement on students?
What I've been doing is I've been doing workshops. I've been doing workshops around the world, largely sponsored by ministries and universities, where we engage groups of teachers in ideas around leapfrogging and around building new futures for education. And we try some different activities and just things to kind of open the mindset a bit and get the conversation going and conversation flowing. The really important thing is that in these professional development opportunities, that we really develop language that we need to talk about the future. We talk about how things are different. We use the word school all the time, for example. And it's kind of like this really rigid, universal thing that school is a school is a school. It's a box, it's divided into boxes, kids sit in boxes, all these different things.
Nothing
and it's
is
hard
out
to
of,
think
outside
about,
the box.
it's hard to get out of that mindset. It's hard to think about anything different. And so if you want to leapfrog, first of all, you've got to start getting out of that mindset.
Out of the box.
And so it's, a lot of it's just about building a new vocabulary, new ways of thinking, and building some comfort and be able to communicate on how we would like to see things different.
That science technology is very important for our students.
Well, I have to agree. It is very important, as is instilling curiosity within kids to become scientists. So it's not just about being great at math and technology, but it's having that creativity, that curiosity to create new stuff out of it, to build new stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'm really feeling honored to have you on my screen here.
Oh.